Life Stories brings you real, inspiring tales of resilience, transformation, and unexpected success. Today's story is about Jessica, a humble teacher whose own family underestimated her until the day they discovered her secret billion-dollar empire. Betrayed by her husband and dismissed by her mother-in-law, she quietly planned the perfect revelation. When the truth finally came out, it changed everything. How did she turn the tables without ever raising her voice? Stay tuned to find out. Subscribe to our channel to begin today's story with Life Stories. I never planned on becoming wealthy. Growing up in a modest home in the suburbs of Chicago, my mother counted every penny. She taught me the value of hard work, of making do with what you had, and of standing on your own 2 feet. Luxury was never something I longed for. What mattered was independence. So, as I sat at my in-laws' grand mahogany dining table, watching my mother-in-law Patricia wave her diamond-studded fingers while dismissing my career choices, I realized something. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't anger or confrontation. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply waiting for the perfect moment. "My dear Jessica," Patricia said, dabbing the corners of her mouth with an embroidered napkin, her voice dripping with insincere warmth, "I just don't understand why you insist on working those measly hours at that public school. Ryan makes enough to support you both, doesn't he?" I felt my husband's eyes flicker toward me from across the table. But he quickly looked down at his plate. Silent. Typical Ryan, always avoiding confrontation. Especially when it came to his mother. "I enjoy teaching," I replied simply, taking a measured sip of wine. I didn't mention the educational technology platform I had built from scratch 5 years ago, an empire now worth 8 figures. I didn't mention how my so-called measly hours at school gave me direct insight into the problems my platform was solving, making it more innovative and profitable with each passing year. Patricia exhaled as if speaking to a naive child. "Well, we've been planning this wonderful family vacation to Hawaii. 3 weeks at a private resort. Judah has already made all the arrangements. Haven't you, dear?" My father-in-law barely looked up from his phone but nodded. "All set for next month," he murmured. "And of course, Ryan will handle your portion of the expenses," Patricia added, shooting me a look that clearly suggested she didn't believe I could contribute. My grip on the wine glass tightened, but my expression remained neutral. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably Megan, my best friend and business partner, updating me on our latest expansion plans. But I kept my focus on the scene unfolding before me. "That's quite generous," I said, watching as Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "How much are we talking about?" "Oh, just $30,000 per couple," Patricia said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "A bargain. Really. For what we're getting." Ryan already agreed it won't be a problem. I almost choked on my wine. Not because of the amount that was pocket change compared to what my company brought in each month, but because my dear husband hadn't even bothered to mention this to me. "Ryan." I turned to him, my voice steady. "When did you agree to this?" He tugged at his collar, a nervous habit I had come to recognize all too well. "Mom mentioned it last week," he muttered. "I thought we could make it work." "Make it work?" Patricia laughed. A light, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "Don't be modest. Ryan. You're doing wonderfully at the firm. And it's not like Jessica's teacher salary would have contributed much anyway." For the first time that evening, Ryan's sister, Sylvia, spoke up. "Mom, that's a bit harsh." "It's just the truth," Patricia said airily, sipping her wine. "Someone needs to say it. Jessica could be doing so much more with her life instead of playing teacher part-time." I felt a smile tugging at my lips, but I suppressed it. If they only knew about the meeting I had yesterday with potential investors. If they only knew about the Forbes interview scheduled for next month. "You're right, Patricia," I said softly, watching as surprise flickered across her face. "Someone does need to say the truth." Ryan looked up sharply. perhaps expecting me to reveal everything. But I had learned that timing is everything, both in business and in life. The truth is, I continued, setting my napkin down, I need to excuse myself. I have lesson plans to prepare for tomorrow. Patricia's triumphant smirk told me everything I needed to know about what she thought of me. Let her believe what she wanted. Let them all believe what they wanted. As I walked to my car, I finally checked my phone. 3 messages from Megan. Deal is done. They're offering double what we asked. Call me ASAP. I smiled. Unlocking my car. This was bigger than I had expected. Bigger than they could ever imagine. Ryan and his family could enjoy their extravagant vacation. They could sip cocktails on the beach, thinking they had left me behind, that they had won. But in a few weeks, they would come home to a reality they never saw coming. And Patricia, she'd see my face on the cover of Forbes. And for the first time in her life, she'd have nothing left to say. The next morning, I was sitting at my favorite cafe, grading papers, when my phone buzzed again. A notification from my banking app. I glanced at the screen absent-mindedly until I saw the number. Withdrawal, $65,000. Transaction approved. For a moment, I just stared. A slow, cold wave washed over me as the reality set in. Ryan had done it. He had actually emptied our joint account to pay for that ridiculous vacation without so much as a conversation. I inhaled deeply, setting down my coffee. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about what it meant. About what it had always meant. I hit dial on Ryan's number. He picked up on the second ring. His voice artificially cheerful. Hey, honey. I was just about to call you. Were you? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Before or after you drained our savings? Silence. A long, heavy silence. Mom said it would be better to handle it quickly, he finally mumbled. You know, to secure the reservations, Anne. Stop. My voice was quiet but firm. Just stop. I heard him exhale. Jessica. It's not a big deal. I know it's a lot. But we'll replenish it. And you seemed on board at dinner the other night. Being polite to your mother is not the same as agreeing to spend our savings on her vacation fantasy. Another silence. Then, finally, a small, defensive edge crept into his voice. I just thought. You didn't think. Ryan. I cut him off. You didn't think at all. You just assumed I'd go along with it. Like I always do. I saw Megan walking into the cafe for our meeting. Her usual bright smile fading the moment she saw my face. I gestured for her to sit down, hanging up before Ryan could respond. Spill it. Megan demanded, pushing my half-finished coffee aside and replacing it with a fresh one. I turned my phone toward her, showing her the banking notification. Her eyes widened. He didn't. Oh, he did. Megan leaned back in her chair, letting out a slow, disbelieving whistle. Wow. And let me guess, Patricia orchestrated the whole thing? Of course. You know what the worst part is? I sighed, stirring my coffee. He didn't even try to hide it. He just assumed I'd accept it. Megan studied me for a long moment. Jess, we both know why you've let them believe you're this passive, struggling teacher for years. I nodded. It protected my business. Right. But maybe it's time to stop hiding. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I pulled up another message on my phone. A text from Emery, my tech assistant. Major tech blog wants to feature our adaptive learning algorithm. Time sensitive. Call ASAP. I showed it to Megan. Her eyes lit up. You know what would be poetic justice, she said, grinning. I raised an eyebrow. Do tell. Let them take their fancy vacation. Let them spend your joint savings thinking they're living large. Meanwhile, she leaned forward, her grin widening. Meanwhile. What? Meanwhile. We accept that Forbes interview we've been putting off. She sat back, triumphant. Time it perfectly with their return. I should have felt guilty. I should have been the bigger person. But all I could think about was Ryan withdrawing our savings without a word. Patricia's constant condescension. Years of being treated like I was somehow less than them. My phone rang again. Ryan. I silenced the call. You know what? I said. Looking Megan straight in the eye. Make the call to Forbes. Her grin turned wicked. Oh. This is going to be good. For the next 2 weeks. I played my role perfectly. Ryan thought I had let it go. He assumed I had resigned myself to his decision. That I had accepted. Once again. That his mother's word was law. I didn't argue when he excitedly packed his suitcase. I didn't protest when Patricia rattled off their extravagant itinerary. Oblivious to my silence. I even kissed Ryan goodbye at the door, watching as he and his family climbed into the waiting car service. Bound for their 3-week Hawaiian getaway. Patricia turned to me with her usual condescending smile. Now, Jessica. Don't be bitter. Perhaps next time you can save up enough from your little teaching job to join us. I smiled sweetly. You're right, Patricia. Maybe next time. As soon as they were gone, I called Megan. They're on the plane, I said. Then it's showtime. Megan was already with the Forbes team at a downtown studio, finalizing details for the feature. They had loved the angle, the billionaire teacher changing the face of education while her own family underestimated her. The moment they heard the story, they had one request: they wanted to make it a cover story. This is happening, Jess, Megan said, practically buzzing with excitement. This is going to put our company in a whole new league. But are you ready for the personal fallout? I thought about Patricia, lounging on some private beach, believing she had one. I thought about Ryan, so comfortable in his assumptions that he hadn't even thought to question how I felt. And I thought about myself, the version of me that had spent years shrinking, hiding my success to keep the peace. I wasn't that woman anymore. I'm ready, I said. The next morning, I stood in my classroom as the Forbes photographer adjusted his camera. Perfect, he said, as I sat at my desk, surrounded by student artwork and lesson plans. Now let's get some shots of you actually teaching. My students were giddy with excitement, eager to be part of the photo shoot. I had told them it was for an education magazine, technically. Not a lie. They had no idea that in a few weeks, their teacher would be splashed across international media as a self-made billionaire. I took a break between shots and checked my phone. Another Instagram notification. Ryan had posted a photo from their resort, his mother, holding a cocktail. Captioned, "Living our best life. #luxury travel." I smiled to myself. They had no idea. Later that evening, I met Megan and Emery, our lead engineer, at our sleek, modern headquarters, the office no one in Ryan's family had ever seen. A Forbes journalist, Sarah, was waiting in our conference room, her notepad ready. Jessica, your story is fascinating, she said. Building a billion-dollar company while continuing to teach part-time, what drove that decision? I smiled, folding my hands on the table. Because teaching is at the heart of what I do. Staying in the classroom keeps me connected to the very people we're trying to help. The students. The teachers. The system. Sarah nodded, scribbling in her notes. And your family? They really don't know? None of them. I confirmed. Right now, my husband thinks he's spending our life savings on a luxury vacation, while I'm sitting here finalizing a deal that will put our platform in schools across 3 continents. Sarah blinked. This is going to be one hell of a story. I leaned back in my chair, thinking about Patricia, Ryan, and the reality they would return to. Yes, I agreed. It is. The magazine hit stands the day before they were scheduled to return. I had planned it perfectly. I arranged for a Forbes copy to be delivered straight to our doorstep. Waiting like a silent bomb, the digital version went live that morning. And within hours, my phone was flooded with messages, former colleagues, industry leaders, even strangers reaching out in admiration. The article was everywhere. I spent the day at home, calmly preparing. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was simply waiting. By evening, I heard the sound of their car pulling into the driveway, right on schedule. I remained seated at the kitchen counter, sipping tea, as I listened to the front door swing open. Then, the rustle of a magazine being picked up, a sharp intake of breath. Then, Ryan's voice, cracked with disbelief. "Mom, you need to see this." Patricia snatched it from his hands. I imagined her flipping through the glossy pages, her fingers trembling over the headline. "The Billion-Dollar Teacher, How Jessica Mitchell Built an EdTech Empire from Her Classroom." Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. Finally, I stood and walked to the foyer, where they all stood frozen. Ryan looked at me like he had never truly seen me before. Patricia's tan from her luxury vacation had paled several shades. Judah, my father-in-law, still fumbling with the luggage, hadn't even noticed yet. "This is some kind of joke," Patricia finally said, flipping through the pages frantically. "Tell me this is a joke." I gently took the magazine from her hands and smiled. "It's not a joke, Patricia. It's just the truth." Ryan swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Jess." I turned to him. "Yes." He ran a hand through his hair. How long?" "5 years." I said simply. "5 years I've been building this. While you and your mother told me I was wasting my time in the classroom." "But you're a teacher," Patricia blurted. It was almost funny, the way her voice cracked on the word. "I am a teacher," I confirmed. "I'm also a CEO, an entrepreneur, and, up until recently, your son's wife." Ryan flinched. Judah finally looked up from his luggage, taking in the scene. "What's going on?" "Jessica is apparently a billionaire," Patricia snapped, tossing the magazine onto the counter like it had personally offended her. Judah blinked. "Wait. What?" I took a deep breath. "Ryan. We need to talk." Ryan looked wary, as if bracing for something far worse than what had already happened. "Okay." I walked to the kitchen counter and picked up a folder. Then, I held it out to him. His hands trembled as he took it. He flipped it open, and his face went pale. "What is this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Divorce papers," I said simply. "Or, if you want, we can try marriage counseling. But I won't live like this anymore. I won't be ignored. And I won't let your mother dictate my life or our marriage." Patricia gasped, looking between us. "Ryan. You can't possibly." "Mom." Ryan interrupted, his voice suddenly firm. "Please. Just, be quiet." For the first time, Patricia fell silent. Sylvia had appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with wide eyes. "Oh," she said slowly. "So, they know now." "You knew?" Patricia hissed. Sylvia shrugged. "I pay attention." Then, she turned to me. "I don't know what you're planning, Jess. But for what it's worth, I'm on your side." I met her gaze and nodded. Ryan closed the folder and exhaled shakily. "I need time to think." "Take all the time you need," I said, walking past them toward the staircase. "But just know I'm not waiting forever." Behind me, the house was silent, except for the soft rustling of magazine pages turning. Ryan didn't sign the divorce papers. Not right away. Instead, 2 days after the confrontation, he asked if we could talk. Really talk. We met at a quiet cafe, away from his family, away from distractions. He looked different, less sure of himself. Like a man who had been forced to examine his life for the first time. "I don't know where to start," he admitted, stirring his untouched coffee. "I feel like I've been living in an alternate reality." I took a sip of mine and waited. "I don't understand how I missed it," he said finally. "I mean, I knew you were smart. But, $1 billion company? Jessica." Why didn't you tell me? I let out a slow breath. Would it have mattered? His brows furrowed. What do you mean? Would it have changed anything? I asked gently. Would it have made you stand up to your mother? Would it have stopped you from emptying our account without talking to me first? He flinched but didn't look away. I didn't tell you. Ryan. Because you never saw me. Not really. You assumed things about me, about my career, about my choices, without ever asking. I sighed, setting my cup down. And I let you. Because it was easier than fighting. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, it didn't matter. Ryan swallowed hard. And now I know it does. He nodded slowly, looking down at his hands. I don't want to lose you, Jess. His voice was quiet but certain. I know I don't deserve another chance. But I'm asking for one anyway. I studied him, searching his face for any sign of his usual defensiveness, his usual deference to Patricia. But for once, I saw only sincerity. I need you to prove it. Ryan. How? Marriage counseling. He blinked, like the thought had never occurred to him. Counseling? Yes. I said simply. No more letting your mother make decisions for you. No more financial betrayals. No more treating me like an afterthought. He was silent for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, he pulled out his phone, found his mother's number, and blocked it. Then he did the same on his email. He looked up at me. It's a start. Right. For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift between us. A possibility. Yeah, I said, giving him a small smile. It's a start. 3 weeks after our first counseling session, Ryan asked if he could see my office. The real one. Not the classroom where I taught part-time, but the sleek, modern headquarters of my company, the place I had built from nothing. I agreed. But with one condition. We have dinner with your parents first. I said. We need to deal with this properly. Ryan hesitated but nodded. Okay. That evening, we met at Sylvia's house, neutral ground. Patricia looked different. Smaller. Somehow. I have something for you, she said hesitantly, handing me an envelope. I opened it, frowning at the receipts inside. They were donations. I funded school supplies for your old district, Patricia said. Fully covered for the year. I stared at her. You did this? She nodded, twisting her napkin in her hands. I've also been volunteering at the literacy center downtown, teaching adults to read. Emotion swelled in my chest. Unexpected and overwhelming. That's wonderful, I said softly. I was wrong, Patricia admitted. About you. About what success looks like. About a lot of things. Sylvia raised her glass. To new beginnings. Ryan stood, glancing at me. And to Jessica, who taught us that strength isn't about what you hide, but what you choose to reveal. I met his gaze. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope for us after all. As I sat back, watching Ryan take his first real steps toward independence, I realized something. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's growth. It's watching people change. Watching them learn. Patricia had learned humility. Ryan had learned courage. And I had learned to never shrink myself again. Success wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about living fully, without fear. As we raised our glasses, I smiled, knowing that this was just the beginning of a new chapter. Subscribe to our channel to follow more incredible life stories.